Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@usaprepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked, blissed? Here we go. This is USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. And we broadcast Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central Time, right here on Genesis Communications Network, GCNlive, Live.com, GCNlive.com. Also on the Ron Gibson channel on YouTube, and also on Republic Broadcasting. Dr. Shealy, are you blissed?
Yes.
Wow, we're going to need it to get through this. Jeez. Dr. Shealy, would you like to share what's new in your world?
Well, what's new in my world is more of the same, what I call now dinosaur feces. It's an insult to the bull. I have seen nothing but conflicting information. You can have any outcome, any current event you wish, and you can find it different on different sites. And I believe the government is at the worst it's ever been, and it's always been bad, but now it is beyond bad.
No disagreement from me. No disagreement from me. You know, I was thinking about the president, and, you know, I try to use the term President Trump rather than what the media says, Trump. But I have to tell you, I think he's getting bad information from people. I think that Wall Street and the international bankers have been pressuring him not to let the economy fall. And there's only two choices as I see it. One, you shut down, you lock down, and you keep people isolated so that the disease peters out. Or you let everybody do whatever they want and infect each other and die. So it's either the economy dies or people die. You know, pick one. And what President Trump has done is he's picked both of them. And so he's let people walk around. He hasn't shut down. You know, when this first happened, he should have shut down the airlines immediately. And we said it. We said it's going to be brought to you by the airlines, and it has been. And we brought foreigners from all over the world, especially China, in here, students, visitors, travelers, vacationers, and so forth. And they brought it with them. And they've infected our country. And he could have stopped it. He could have, but he didn't. He should have shut down the airlines on day one. But no, money, power, and greed in commerce, corporations prevailed.
Well,
and so a lot of people died.
There's one thing that makes me wonder more than everything else about Trump, and that is having Fauci in charge, essentially. Fauci is, in my opinion, one of the top criminals in the world. He is clearly a member of the Gates Committee of 300 terror organization. And why he should be the one advising Trump doesn't escapes me totally.
Okay. But, Dr. Shealy, what would you do if you had his position, if you had Fauci's position? Would you recommend a lockdown? What would you do as a medical doctor?
Well, I would do it very differently, and I would not go through this artificial $2 trillion or more dollar nonsense that they can't afford in the first place. I mean, it's not possible. That alone is going to never be repaid.
That's correct, and it can only be paid through inflation, which means it'll never be repaid. And we mentioned this on USA Prepares many times, and that is once this money, these $1,200 presence from the federal government to help alleviate some of the suffering. Once that hits, it will be inflationary to be absolutely certain. There's no question. It has to be inflationary. But what I believe has really happened is that people whom couldn't afford to pay their bills, they couldn't afford to pay their rent, their mortgage payment, and so forth because they've been laid off, or they've been furloughed, or they've been fired, or their company has shut down, those people were probably counting on that money to pay bills that were that occurred previously. So once that money hits, it's already gone. It's gone. Credit card statements won't be paid, can't be paid because people have lost their jobs. So I believe that helicopter money, whatever you want to call it, from the printing press, will be inflationary, and we will see it in higher prices, and it will be as if we never received it because the price of everything will go up. There's no question it has to go up. That's just simple economics. And we've been saying that, and we are not changing our tune whatsoever. But it sounds like those checks that were coming out a long time ago are going to be out, now they say, this week. I'll believe it when I see it. But not everybody gets it. Not everybody gets the check. That's what I'm saying.
That's part of the government nonsense as usual. You have to have certain criteria of how you paid your income tax to get it. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yep, and we paid our income tax with a check. So I think ours will be delayed like 12 weeks. Everybody gets it, well, but not everybody gets it. And I looked on the internet that if you are self-employed, so for example, our boys are self-employed, and they pay self-employment insurance. So they pay money to the government for the privilege of working for themselves. And they're entitled to it also, but they have to fill out more forms. At least that's what I've been reading, and it's complicated.
Well,
it's extremely complicated.
You don't expect anything to be simple, including breathing, when it comes to government.
Mm-hmm. And I believe that the main reason, and the government hasn't said this, and I haven't read anything about this particular reason for passing out this, we'll call it government money, is to keep people from rioting for a while. Because when they've lost it, as Gerald Celente would say, when people lose everything and they have nothing left to lose, they lose it. Meaning they lose their tempers, they have short fuses, and they just go crazy. And they burn down and bash and crash and break things in their path. And I think that's what's coming. I mean, I don't think it. I absolutely positively believe it's coming. And this $1,200 is going to be just to stop that for a while or to slow it down for a while. But I believe there's going to be riots in the streets. I absolutely believe it. How could there be anything less than rioting in the street? Not that I advocate it, but when people are hungry.
Gun sales nationally are up over 40%.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's got the few that tell us what to do really, really worried. Because, if you think about it, class, if you want to go visit the White House, you're not going to be able to. They've got all kinds of weapons protecting the White House, so you're not going to be able to go say hi to anybody there. But, if you want to go visit the home of your Congress critter, that's a little more doable. If you want to go visit the home of your governor, that's a little more doable. If you want to go visit the home of your alleged representatives in your state representatives, that's a little more doable. The mayor of your little hamlet, that's a little more doable. Those things are doable. But at the federal level, it's not. So I think that governors and mayors and alleged representatives are really, really worried because if they don't do something to keep the people quiet, they'll be rioting and they will get visited in their own homes. I really think that's going to happen. Dr. Shealy, it doesn't seem like this can be medically fixed.
Well, and that's the other. The medical news is all over the place, and this idea of the CDC telling physicians to if somebody dies, call it the virus, whether or not you've proved it. That is insanity supreme.
Okay, and I've read almost the opposite. I've read that if not exactly the opposite, but almost that, and that's what you said in the beginning. You said that there's conflicting information from the media and from government, I believe. Well, what I have read says that if a person dies at home and it looks like it's the virus, we don't even count that. If a person dies from what could be the virus and the person is alone, it's not counted. So how, those are conflicting types of information. Count it as a virus, don't count it as a virus. And then we also have the nursing homes. The nursing homes, I talked to one of our relatives whose mother, this relative's in Florida, relative through marriage, and her mother was in one of those assisted living places in Florida. Well, they were told that they had 24 hours to get her out of the nursing home, or she would be locked in the nursing home. Pick one. So fortunately, my relative through marriage was able to get her mother out of this assisted living concentration camp. Now they can't get out. Now they're locked in. And a nursing home today, to me, is exactly that. It is a concentration camp where there's a concentration of the coronavirus in the air and spread through the air, and pretty much everyone is exposed to it. And a lot die. Isn't that what's happening, Dr. Shealy?
Oh, yeah. But I don't trust any statistic from anywhere that I get these days.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dr. Shealy, so what do you do if you had a person in your family, one of your relatives, who was in a nursing home? What would you recommend, or what would you personally do?
Well, I think I would try to bring them home and give them IV vitamin C.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I agree with that. And if you couldn't get IV or intravenous vitamin C, what would you do as a common person, a non-medical type?
Well, you could get liposomal C and up it to at least 6,000 milligrams a day, and see if they tolerate that. And, of course, be sure to get them 100 milligrams of B6. Anytime you increase vitamin C, you must increase your B6 at least.
That was 100 milligrams of vitamin B6 and 6,000 milligrams of liposomal vitamin C.
Yeah.
And 6,000 milligrams is 6 grams, class.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And Dr. Shealy, what's your opinion of how long quarantine should be?
Well, until the increasing number of unequivocal cases of the virus has begun to go down instead of up. In other words, a minimum of 2 to 3 weeks when there's a decreasing daily or weekly incidence of infection.
Okay. Dr. Shealy's with us, normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com, medical doctor, surgeon of the year, author of almost 40 books, and he is practicing in Springfield, Missouri. Class, I suggest, and I'm sure Dr. Shealy does as well, we suggest that you grow a garden. And I called Mike Knox, USA Prepares instructor. He's in Hartville, Missouri. And he has a company called White Harvest Seed Company. So for as long as we've been on the air, I've known Mike Knox, and he's been to a number of our expos. His seeds actually grow. So you can buy seeds, but not all seeds grow, and he only has heirloom seeds. So I called them last week and asked if I could give out their information. I am not being paid for this. There's no compensation. I'm doing it for all of us. So here it is. So it's whiteharvestseed.com. Whiteharvestseed.com. And the telephone number is 866-424-3600. 3185, 866-424-3185. And if you buy online, here's a code that'll get you 15% off your first order. WHSC, which stands for White Harvest Seed Company. The number 15 for 15. WHSC 15. That'll get you 15% off. And if you want to mention my name, feel free to do that. And thank him for taking care of you, because it's difficult to get seeds right now. Dr. Shealy, you recommend growing a garden, yes?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But my favorite, of course, is reading.
Mm-hmm.
That is my favorite.
But sometimes you have to eat, right?
Oh, well.
So growing a garden. Yeah.
Yes.
Dr. Shealy, here's something that's happening in Missouri, and I wanted to share this with our class. Farmers are putting up camper trailers, the kind that you pull with your vehicle. Small ones, medium, large ones, and they're now in their driveways, which is very interesting. And it seems to me, and it seems like people are in them. I left the farm to just move some hay several days ago. It's the only reason I left the farm. And I went point to point. I didn't stop. And we just hauled some hay. And I noticed that there are these camper trailers. And I also noticed that there are these sheds, storage sheds, maybe 8 feet by 12 feet long. Some maybe 8 by 8. Little, small buildings. And they have windows in them with screens. And it seems to me that what's happening is the farmers around here have built their own quarantine areas on their properties for either themselves or their relatives. And it seems like people are staying in these things. So I just wanted to share that with the class, that as we go further down this road of quarantine and communicability of the coronavirus and the ensuing corona panic, that may be an option. So you may want to do something like that or consider that. But, of course, you'd have to disinfect whatever it is you buy. So, Dr. Shealy, have you seen those in your travels going, from your farm to your clinic?
I haven't, but to be quite honest, I don't pass that many farms.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I have, I've seen them, and I think that's what they are. Now, I can't say for sure. Maybe people just decided that now is the season to buy storage sheds and campers. That could be. But I think that it's bigger than that, because the people who have these didn't look like they had a lot of money to just squander. Now, maybe their relatives said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to have a storage shed dropped off in your driveway, or I'm going to have a camper dropped off in your driveway, and by the way, we're going to show up on Tuesday. That could be happening too. Yeah. I found it very difficult to buy food. Have you experimented with what it's like buying food, Dr. Shealy?
Well, I've actually been to the grocery store only once since the shutdown, and I would say probably 40% of the shoppers wore masks, and I found everything I needed at Harder House.
Mm-hmm. And that's Harder House in Springfield?
Yeah.
Okay. You found everything you need. That's incredible, because I've been trying to buy online and have it shipped, and it's tough. I can't. Sam's Club, I just try to buy one item, and they'll say it's in stock, and I'll click ship it, and they don't have it. I've even experimented with go to pick it up, click and pick it up, and they don't have it either, even though they say it's in stock. So zero success. Class Dr. Norm Shealy's with us. Dr. Shealy, there's a gal, she's actually the mayor of Chicago. Her name is Lori Lightfoot. And she's been on the news with a face mask that says, stay home. Okay? Stay home. So her message is stay home. And what she did was she told people that, getting your hair done is not essential, so stay home. So what did she do? Well, she got her hair done. And So now she's being criticized for being a hypocrite. And of course she is. So she's saying, don't do what I do what I say. And she said, and here's the quote. She said, quote, I'm a person who, comma, I take my personal hygiene very seriously. As I said, I feel like I needed to have a haircut, and I'm not able to do that myself, end quote. So what she's saying is, don't you all be going out getting your hair cut and your roots dyed. Stay home. It's not necessary.
So I can get mine.
But she said,
y'all stay home so I can get mine.
Right. So y'all don't be making a big line for me to get in, so I can get right up to the chair and have it done quickly. So there she is. So and the point I'm trying to make is it's always the same thing. The people in government tell us what to do, but they don't necessarily follow their own recommendations, edicts, demands, and so forth. They do. Well, we all have to have this shared sacrifice, except us, right? Because we're the government. We don't have to share in any sacrifice. That's just for you all peons, the bottom 93%. So I just wanted to share that. Dr. Shealy, there's a gal, 15 years old, and we talked about this weeks ago. We said that my words were something like, I think that the young people are going to go stark raving mad. They are not going to be able to cope with staying at home. Once they're ordered to stay at home, the lockdown is going to be very, very difficult on them and for them. Well, a very sad story. There's a gal by the name of Giovanni. Now, let me spell this. So J, big J, little O, apostrophe, big V, little I-A-N-N-I. Joe Vanni, last name Smith, killed herself last week in Stockton, California, in her home. And her mother, Danielle Hunt, believed that Giovanni's death was caused by the pressures from coping with the self-isolation during the corona pandemic panic. Now, she was a sophomore and an athlete at high school. And the mother wants to share the story so that maybe it can prevent the suicides of other children. So here we have a 15-year-old who couldn't stand the isolation and killed herself. I have a feeling that the pressures that these young people feel are very, very strong, and I don't think they have a coping mechanism as maybe our generation, my generation, your generation, Dr. Shealy, has in order to cope with this, because we used to do things. We used to play outside. We used to invent our own entertainment, if you will. We didn't have to go to the movies to be entertained. We didn't have to have a cell phone to be entertained. We could do things on our own and amuse ourselves, right? Entertain ourselves, make things, invent things, build things, fix things. That's what we used to do. But I don't think young people have been encouraged to do that, and I think they're at a loss as to what to do. Your thoughts on what would cause a 15-year-old?
There's no question about it. Let's face it, the suicide rate has been increasing over the last several decades anyway, because people just don't know how to live.
Yeah.
Living is a broad-based theme. It's not a one-size-fits-all.
Yesterday,
I remember at age 9 when I had an infection in my right knee. And in those days, they just cut it open and left it open. And I had it for 3 months. I couldn't do anything. I sat at home, but I played Monopoly with a neighbor. You know?
Yeah. Yesterday, here at the farm, I had a couple minutes between tasks, and I got this long rod is probably 1.5 inches diameter, probably weighs 20 pounds. And I got a bucket of fertilizer and a trowel, and I started, it was just lightly drizzling. Took this heavy bar out with a point on it, and I slammed it into the ground, made a hole, slammed it in again, and started putting fertilizer in the ground around, grapevines, fruit trees, berry bushes, and so forth, so that, they'd have a better chance of growing and bearing fruit. And what I'm saying is, if young people lived on a farm, they could do the same kind of thing. Now, was it a lot of fun carrying this heavy rod around the farm? Absolutely not. But, it's productive. It was heavy, but yet it was something that was worth doing. But I have a feeling that we have trained our young people not to think like that. We've trained them to feel that, instead of going to classes to learn things like plumbing, heating, electrical, wiring, air conditioning, auto body repairs, auto mechanics, hairstyling, things that you actually do with your hands. We've taught them to just use keyboards and mice. And you don't need to actually frame a house and learn how to frame in the trades classes at high school. You can do it virtually. You can build a house with a mouse. You don't need a hammer. You don't need nails. You don't need a saw. You don't even have to work up a sweat. You don't even have to get dust in your eyes. You can do it right on that screen. And I think that's one of the reasons that we've gone astray. And I believe that's one of the main reasons is that suicides have increased for decades. Because for decades, we've pulled those trades out of the schools where people actually did things. For example, you don't need to dissect a frog in biology. You can do it on the screen. There's a big difference between surgery on a screen and surgery in real life. Yes, Dr. Shealy?
Well, I really enjoy doing it live, so to speak. However, I agree. Even I do many, many, many more things on the computer than I ever imagined I could 20 years ago.
Well, would you rather have, if you were leading a team at the hospital, would you rather have your surgeons be trained on a screen or in person?
In person. Mm-hmm. No question about it. There is a difference between the three-dimensional aspect that you get in person that you can get on a screen. Mm-hmm. But how it's better than no breath at all. Yeah. So any training is better than none.
Mm-hmm. But you don't get your hands wet and put your hands in plasma if you're using a mouse and a keyboard, right?
Well, of course not.
And you don't need to wear a face shield if you're using a computer screen.
Unless somebody's near you.
Yeah. Good point. So the coronavirus, the news I'm reading, they keep giving us little dribbles of information. So the coronavirus, now they're saying, may be twice as infectious as thought, with an R0 of 5.7. So when it first came out, the R0 was 1.2 to 2.1. So your government class was saying that one person could infect 1.2 people, which really means four infected people could infect a total of 5 on the low end, or one person could affect 2.1 people. Well, now they're saying we're a little off. It's actually twice that, so one person infecting 5.7. So if you rounded that, you'd say one person infected 6. Our numbers from early on, now I'm not a scientist, well, I studied science, but I'm not a scientist, and I'm certainly not a medical doctor, but my intuition, my estimation told me that the number was between 12 and 16. And Miles in Europe said, well, in some areas it's 20. So, well, I guess 12 to 14, then Miles brought it to 20. So now the government has said, well, we're wrong by, it's actually twice what we thought it was. So I just wanted to let you know, class, that if you think that you can believe anything the government says, you need to have your head examined. Let's see. We've got George in New Hampshire. Welcome. You're on with Dr. Norm Shealy.
Hi, Dr. Shea. Hey, Vincent.
Hey.
Good morning.
Good morning. I just wanted to weigh in on one thing about the suicide rate increase. In the early phases of World War II, they said the British found that because they were such a seagoing power, they said that the U-boats were having a field day sinking British shipping. Well, they said they were finding on a not uncommon basis that they'd find survivors in the lifeboats. They had plenty of rations in the lifeboats and everything to be life-sustaining, and they might have been in the lifeboat for maybe a day or two. And they said they would find these young men dead. And they said what they found was that these men hadn't really been toughened or hardened, these young men. And they said they came up with this program called Outward Bound that ultimately came here. I don't know if either of you gentlemen have heard of it.
No, please continue.
Well, the Outward Bound was like a survival course that they'd teach young people and adults, all ages. And what it would culminate in doing, they would drop them off for several days on an island that had different things, and they'd teach them about how to forage and different things. And they'd drop them off on an island. I think it was up in Maine. And they said the island had plenty of flora and fauna that, in other words, they could basically eat, they could get by, and they'd have certain survival skills. And they found that, by culminating into that experience, that they'd leave them there for several days, and they'd have probably some provision where, in other words, if there was an emergency, they could get them off. But no, it was basically they were on their own. And also the way the Native Americans would basically have the rituals going from, youth into manhood. They would have them basically have to go off by themselves and no food, and basically just stand out in the wilderness in some place, and it could go on like for 3 days. But it was a toughening process, but it was also a process in which they might have a vision that would reveal to them what their life course should be.
George, would you like to hold and tell us more through the break?
If that's all right, sure.
Yeah, and I'd like to mention something about U-68, U-Boat 68, Carl Merton's boat. We'll be right back. Plus, Dr. Norman Shealy's with us, and George is with us in New Hampshire. George, you were talking about suicide, and you were talking about World War II. Please continue.
Well, I was just going to say is that they found the same thing, too, with people who get lost in the woods. What I've heard is that the majority of them that don't make it, some of them, of course, will die from exposure, but some of them, they said, it's partly they die of shame and hopelessness. And I think a lot of the young people today, they've lived in such a controlled environment where basically everything's at their fingertips, and most of them didn't know what it is to go through any types of disruptions or hard times. I'm not going to say all, but I'm saying too many of them, they've ended up where they basically feel that, how many times have you, Vincent, or you, Dr. Shealy, you're on hold, and the person on the other side said, and only like maybe a few seconds have gone by, and they said, we apologize, we're waiting for the download, or we're waiting for this. And I said to myself, I would say to them, I said, look, I'm from the generation when we used to have to wait several minutes for the television to warm up. And I actually had one young woman in the bank, when I told her that, she blurted out, really? Like she couldn't believe it, and everybody burst out laughing. But I tell people, I said, take your time, don't worry. I said, I don't mind waiting a little bit, But
George, it's very interesting what you're saying. I have co-hosted on another network, and it's very, very interesting. And let me contrast the two different networks without mentioning the other network. So we are originating on Genesis Communications Network. I can see on the screen that you've been with us for 9 minutes, 13 seconds. And I could also see how long that you had been on hold before I answered. So what I've seen at USA Prepares on Genesis Communications Network is that calls will come in and people will wait 5, 10, sometimes even 15 or more minutes, and they stay with us. And on another network, I was told when I was guest hosting or guest co-hosting, you got to get to the calls quickly or they'll drop off. Well, I'm not used to that. I mean, I'm used to, if I'm talking with Dr. Shealy, I'm not going to interrupt him and say, yo, hold it. We have a call. If Dr. Shealy, because it's not polite. Okay, so if there's a break in the discussion, that's the time to take the call. At least that's what I think. Now, I haven't been trained in how to do radio, so I really don't know, but that's what I think. So, but I have noticed that when I was guest hosting, I would go to take a call and they'd be gone because it took me too long. Now, it's not like it was idle chatter. It was waiting for the right second, the right moment to take those calls. So that, I think, is what you're saying. So the audience, our class, is different here at GCN when we're live than when I'm guest hosting for someone else's broadcast. And they're interested in rapid response and short, come on the air, short questions, short answers, and next call. I'm not interested in doing that. So I have seen exactly what you're saying. So some people don't have the attention span or don't have the endurance to wait on hold to be on the air, whereas others, like at USA Prepares, they do. So very interesting that you're saying that. And I think that has a really big impact on these young people's inability to be patient.
Yeah, like I said, I'm sure Dr. Shealy, you see in your practice people who, just with a little bit of patience and focus, they could be doing so much better. And you've seen many generations of people pass through in your medical career. And what have you noticed, if you don't mind my asking, about, say, the older generation, meaning like maybe Vincent's, Mayans, and also the World War II generation as opposed to today? Could you give us some insights on maybe
It's called patience. Not P-A-T-I-E-N-C, P-A, waiting and patient. In other words, today's world, people have no sense that things happen. Wait, they won't now. Instant gratification. That's the difference.
Instant gratification. Total agreement here. And, George, I think what you were saying earlier in this call is that when you're put on hold, the person who put you on hold, that business that you've called, they'll come right back to you after 20 seconds. Still there? Still there? Of course I'm still here. I'm at your mercy. Of course I'm still here. And I guess they're kind of surprised. But I've heard young people lose their temper because they've been on hold for a couple minutes and they just can't stand it. George, I've got a comment about you're talking about World War II and being on a lifeboat. I've got a comment about U-boat 68. Would you like to hold? I'd love to hear your comment on this.
All right. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Captain Carl Merton, M-E-R-T-E-N. Interesting story. We'll be right back. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Jason is engineering the broadcast at GCN in Minnesota. Thank you, Jason. I just heard at the top of the hour news that average price for gasoline in the United States is $2.01 per gallon. Here in Missouri, in Galena, Missouri, you can buy it for 99 cents a gallon. If you want to go to Joplin, Missouri, it's $1.01. If you want to go to Neosho, Missouri, it's $1.03. So gasoline is a lot less expensive than the national average right here in the corrupt state of Missouri. I want to mention U-boat 68. And George mentioned, during World War II, being in a lifeboat and what it was like. Well, there's a German submarine called U-68. And the captain of U-Boat 68 was Captain Carl Merton. And the reason I'm mentioning it is I had in my hand his presentation dagger, presented by his men. And if you were going to be sunk during World War II, you wanted to be sunk by Captain Carl Merton of the Wolfpack. And he was in the Kriegsmarine, Nazi Germany's Kriegsmarine, during World War II. And this particular U-boat sank 32 merchant ships. And what he would do is he would disable the ship. And then he would make sure that the men got in their lifeboats. And then he would tow the lifeboats near shore. And then he would take off. That was Captain Carl Merton. George, did you ever hear about him?
Did he also, I remember you had someone from Shark Hunters, Harry Cooper. He said something about a man who he ordered the people into the lifeboats, and then he looked at them. There were men, women, and children, and he says, no, get back on the ship. And I guess he says that he was going to be following them into Marseille, and he says, now you set a course, and you sail right into this in French-occupied France port, and you surrender to the officials. I'm going to be right behind you. And he goes, the captain of the ship that would have been sunk had no idea that U-boat realistically couldn't keep up with him, so he just pulled into Marseille. But was this the same captain, do you think? Would you think? I know the name. It surely sounds like him. Yeah, and the U-boat, his particular U-boat, had 2 supercharged diesel engines. It was quite incredible. And I believe it produced somewhere over 4,000 horsepower, metric horsepower. But the speed that it could travel on the surface was around 21 miles per hour, converted from knots, 21 miles an hour. But underwater, more like, but underwater was more like 5 or 6 miles per hour. So no, it couldn't catch, an, above water, traditional ship. Yeah. Very interesting. And that's a really good point that you bring up, that underwater, submarines weren't all that fast. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So the point was that these people were he gave them a chance to get on the lifeboats, made sure that they got to safety. But that wasn't enough, was it, George? Because some still committed suicide, right? In like I say, they found it with the British, particularly in the early phases of the war. See, the Germans had been toughening their youth with, especially like the Hitler youth. They were involving them in sports. They got very athletic, very strong, and you could see the results of how far they got in the early phases of the war. They'd come up against numerically superior forces. But as far as the training and the esprit de corps and building up, I think they even said, and I think Dr. Shealy, you might be able to confirm this or not, but in World War II they said because of the rigors of the depression and the malnutrition, I think they said something like maybe at least 20% or maybe more of the young men who would volunteer for service were found that they could not pass the physical because of the malnutrition had weakened their bodies to such an extent that they really were not physically able to stand up to the military training.
I think that's correct.
Have you heard too, Dr. Shealy? Vincent, I think they said even now, they said there's a higher percentage of young people that are just not sufficiently strong enough constitutionally, physically, to even pass the physicals for the present military service as well.
I think that is true.
Dr. Shealy? Yes, I've read that as well. Yeah, I've read that as well. And here's something very interesting, class. According to the president of the Federal Reserve, he is saying that America should brace itself for 18 months of shutdowns as the U.S. economy faces a long, hard road to recovery from the coronavirus pandemic. Now, we said a long time ago that this is going to be at least 2 years before we start to see daylight. So they're up to a year and a half now. They're starting to realize that maybe we might have been right, that it's going to be 2 years before we see a glimmer of hope. But they're at 18 months. We're at 24. Well, there's no question. There's no question that on Main Street, it is very difficult as people have lost their jobs. Clinics have closed. Dr. Shealy, I'm sure you know that medical doctors and nurses have had pay cuts. Now you got to wonder, with all of this panic going on and the hospitals being overwhelmed, why would the pay to doctors and nurses be reduced? Why would that happen? Well, it's happening.
Because it's government. Anytime you mention sensibility, forget government.
There's a story. I called CenturyLink this morning because our internet went down and I was calling for my $50 credit. And every time the internet goes down, I was finally able to get through. It's been weeks that I've been calling because they had an outage from noon till, I don't know, 9 o'clock at night. And I was anxious to get my $50 credit. And whenever it goes down, I call them up just to remind them that they really have lousy service. Well, I got to talk to a guy today, and he's really a wonderful man. And I told him, I said, "You're concerned about this corona panic, right?" And he said, "Yes." And I explained to him about the meat industry. And I said that I was on the air with Dr. Norm Shealy, and we were talking about meat, and we're talking about dead bodies and putting dead bodies in refrigerated trucks because they're overwhelmed with so many dead bodies in New York City that they don't know what to do with them. So they're putting them in refrigerated tractor trailers. And then I asked Dr. Shealy, how long would the coronavirus last on refrigerated bodies? And I believe the number was around a month. So I said, if that's the case, and the meat packers and some of the major meat packers in the United States are infected, that means that the air in the meat packing place is infected. That means that the coronavirus is on the meat. That means that I wouldn't touch the meat. That means that if it's refrigerated, it would be just like on a human body by extension. At least I think so. And that means that you shouldn't touch it for at least a couple months. Now, so then the thought is, well, yeah, but if you cook it. But how do you get it out of the package? So if you're handling chopped meat,
yes.
How do you get it out of the package and make a hamburger with it, okay, without coming in contact either by air or by touch with this meat? So, Dr. Shealy, do you think that extension is correct or not, that you should be very careful of, we'll call it fresh meat in a package like chopped meat or steak or roast or something like that in today's world with?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, let me read the headlines. So, Daily Mail, quote, one of America's largest pork processing plants becomes the third major meat factory forced to close after 240 employees catch COVID-19, prompting fears of a nationwide shortage. Continues as to say, Smithfield Meat Processing has 3,700 employees. 240 have coronavirus. Plant employees make up around half of South Dakota's active cases. The state's governor and mayor spoke to the company to recommend closure. Other states in the U.S. have also closed their plants, putting meat supply at risk. Now, we talked about this well over a week ago, that you really should not be eating meat or touching meat or consuming meat because of this was just barely making the news last week. Now this plant is the third plant forced to close. So that means, what does it mean? Well, it means pork, beef, and chicken. That's where we are right now.
Well, there's always canned salmon and sardines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, sardines, those are those guys that look up at you right from the can.
I'm sorry?
Those sardines, those are those little guys that look up at you from the can, right?
I like the Crown Prince variety. They have no bones and no skin. They look just like fish.
Yeah, I like the skinny ones. Yeah, like Dr. Shealy, the bristlings.
Yeah.
One thing,
but don't they have eyes that look up? Don't they have eyes that look up?
My father used to tease us as kids. He said he had a job one time in a sardine plant, and his job was to close the eyes of the sardines before they closed the can.
He had a sense of humor, at least.
That generation, I'll tell you, we love them. You know what I mean? They're God bless them. You know.
Yeah, I called one of our neighbors, and he lives down the road from us. A wonderful man. And I called him up and I said, "Hey, do you want some eggs? We have some extra eggs here from our chickens." I said they were just laid. They're fresh eggs. They're brown eggs. Would you like some? I can leave them at the end of the gate and put them in a bag for you, and you can come pick them up. What do you think? And I said, now they have been with a rooster, so they've been fertilized. Is that a problem? He goes, no, I don't think it's a problem, and they won't mind too much if I eat them right away. So there's a little more humor from the 67-year-old generation, right?
Well, the other thing was I called some of my friends there over the weekend. And I said, look, the Easter Bunny's been quarantined. So I said, I'm sorry. I said, I know you'll take it in stride, but, you always look for an opportunity to laugh, you know what I mean, in the middle of a crisis. Hey, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure, and I know you got a lot to cover, so God bless both. Very nice talking to both of you. God bless.
Have a good one.
George, thank you. Thank you. Dr. Shealy and I will be right back. Class, Dr. Norman Shealy is with us. And to tell you a little bit more about this closing of the Smithfield Foods plant, the article goes on to say, quote, this is Daily Mail, quote, the CEO of Smithfield Foods has claimed the country's meat supply is at risk as the company is forced to close one of the country's largest pork processing facilities until further notice due to the coronavirus. The facility is in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and is closing as a number of its employees have fallen ill with COVID-19, the disease caused by coronavirus, and is one in a list of plants that have shut down during the crisis. The closure of this facility, combined with the growing list of other protein plants that have shuttered across our industry, is pushing the country perilously close to the edge in terms of our meat supply, the meat processor's CEO, Kenneth Sullivan, said in a statement on Sunday. That was yesterday. It is impossible to keep our grocery stores stocked if our plants are not running. These facility closures will have severe, perhaps disastrous repercussions for many in the supply chain. Sullivan said that Smithfield had been operating during the coronavirus crisis because it wanted to sustain the nation's food supply. Now, what they were saying is, yeah, we're infected, but we're running anyway. I don't think it has so much to do, this is my opinion, to do with sustaining the nation's food supply as it does to maintaining profitability for the shareholders or the owners. Dr. Shealy, so medically speaking, it sounds to me as if there is meat out there for consumption, for purchase, that was processed in a plant that was infected. That's how I read this. I mean, that's reading way between the lines. And we did a class on Newspeak, many classes on Newspeak and, doublespeak. And it seems to me that if you apply Newspeak and doublespeak to this, there are boxes of meat that have been shipped across the country that have been processed in an infected plant. There's no question in my mind. Dr. Shealy, what would we do as a precaution not to become ill from this?
Well, if you don't have it stored already, I don't think there's any way you can be certain, because it's going to come wrapped in paper usually, and it's been in your food basket. And once you get it home, there's no way of sterilizing the outside of that package adequately before you open the package. So you're taking your chances. If you somehow get it out, wash your hands thoroughly, get the pan into some heated pan for cooking quickly, maybe. But it's risky.
But it could also be on the meat itself, correct?
Of course. Now,
Yeah.
theoretically, if you cook it done, you should kill the virus.
Okay. It's the handling that's the big issue. The handling,
Exactly.
the opening the package, the outer package, the inner package, the meat itself. Okay, so according to this article, reading further down, it says other meat, quote, other meat processing plants across the country have also shut down due to sick employees, including processors in Iowa and Pennsylvania. Tyson, another of the world's largest meat processors, has suspended its operations in one of its plants in Columbus Junction, Iowa, after over 20 workers contracted COVID-19. The company said that it would redirect its livestock that was due at the plant in Columbus Junction to other plants to reduce the impact on supply. Another meat processor, JBS USA, ceased operations for 2 weeks at its beef plant in Sounderton, Pennsylvania, and plans to reopen April 16th. Several members of the plant's management team could not go to work due to experiencing flu-like symptoms, leading to the decision to close the plant. And another plant in Pennsylvania, Hazleton, has also paused operations where 900 people usually work. So that's, we'll end the quote there. What we're saying is, class, the meat industry is infected with the coronavirus. The employees are infected, and they were still producing packaged meats for your consumption. And they say it was to keep us all fed. Really? Be very careful with the meat supply. Class, Dr. Shealy is with us, Dr. Norman Shealy. If you'd like to meet with Dr. Shealy, you can go to his website, get the contact information, normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com. I see we have a call on hold, and Jason will get to you. He'll answer the call, and then I can put you on the air. So please stay with us. Let it ring. Dr. Shealy, there's a story about a woman who caught coronavirus despite self-isolating for 3 weeks, and she believed it was passed to her when she collected a bag of groceries left at her doorstep. It says that she was in North Carolina, in Charlotte, North Carolina, self-isolating, and she has an underlying condition, and she kept a distance from others as a precaution, including her husband, who's living in a separate room. And despite these measures, she still tested positive for the virus, and she's having difficulties breathing, and she believes she caught it from a woman who delivered groceries to her doorstep. What do you think about getting it from a package delivered at your doorstep? What would you do? Is there a precaution that you would recommend, Dr. Shealy?
I don't think there's any way. I mean, look, the outside of the package, the inside of the package, it's all contaminated if it's been near it. And I saw some stupid thing about leaving out so many hours in the sunshine, but that doesn't really sterilize the inside of the bag. And it's a bag, it's open. You just take your chances and grab what you can.
Okay, well, what we do is we leave it outside in the sun, and, we are all suited up, gloved up, respirator, all that, and flip it over after, sometimes 45 minutes, sometimes hours, sometimes days. Make sure all sides are disinfected by the sun, and then suited up, open the package, discard the contents in the fire. We have an outdoor wood furnace that's running 24/7, so the packaging goes in the fire right away. But no package is opened inside, none. David in Illinois, welcome. You're on with Dr. Norm Shealy.
Yeah, how you doing?
How you doing?
I can't help it. I don't mean to change subjects real quick, but I was going to ask Dr. Shealy, on your website, it's time for me to order the wife's magnesium, and since she's almost out, I'm trying to get that ordered with the vitamin D and things. What magnesium on your site am I supposed to get?
Well, the one I use is just plain old magnesium lotion.
Okay.
We make a peppermint flavored for those people who like that, and we also make a spray. I personally just use the plain lotion.
Okay. Because she's been using the spray.
And it's all, the content is all, the same amount of magnesium, so it doesn't matter from that point of view.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now, do you have vitamin K2 on your site too?
Yes, we do. And that's one of the few places you could get the 15 milligrams of K2.
Yeah, because we're almost out of those too. So I have to get, because I try to buy in bulk for a while. Hey, you were talking earlier. I hope you don't mind me mentioning this. I told you last week, Vince, that I was listening to the police scanners in different cities, and it's amazing how many young people, they are not doing well with this staying indoors. They're losing it. I mean, just this morning there was a standoff in California. I've been listening to it all night. I don't know if they resolved it since your show came on. They sent in a robot, one of the robots, and we're using the flare thermal to see if he had any hostages, the one guy. But you listen to them, and a lot of them are these people college age and younger, and they're losing it. They just can't stay in the house, I guess.
What would it be like if they were incarcerated in a small cell in a prison?
Yeah, I wonder. Did you hear that the Cook County Prison has got the largest amount of infected inmates? It was like over 400 last week.
I believe I read that. One of the problems with reading all this news is it seems to all run together. It's hard to remember all the different components of who did what, who said what, and where it is and when. You're absolutely right, but I believe I read that.
I heard an interview last week with the new Attorney General of California, and he was saying they should release everybody from the prison.
Yeah. Like we got enough problems as it is.
Well, that really is cruel and unusual punishment. I mean, to put someone in, to incarcerate someone and have them in an infected area. Now, I don't know what the answer is, but to me, that sounds like cruel and unusual punishment. Now, maybe the one exception might be Bernie Madoff. Another one might be Harvey Weinstein, him. They might be exceptions where that wouldn't be cruel and unusual. Should be meted out. But it seems to me that packing people in nursing homes and not letting them leave because of the coronavirus, that's cruel and unusual. Now, I don't know why families would put people in nursing homes if they didn't absolutely, positively have to. But some families are more into, travel and themselves rather than taking care of the people who, their mothers and their fathers. I mean, I don't understand. I don't get it. But George Stephanopoulos. George Stephanopoulos tested positive for coronavirus. Had no symptoms, but his wife, Ollie Wentworth, said she had never been sicker. So, Dr. Shealy, it seems that some people, when they get it, they go, it's no big deal. Other people, when they get it, they feel like there's never been anything worse. What is your take on, why is that, Dr. Shealy?
It is the strength and health of your immune system. It is all over the place. I mean, if you do not have good health habits, your immune system is going to be weak. And every habit that you don't have, every essential health habit that you don't have, weakens your immune system worse. So being overweight, smoking, not eating at least 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, not exercising regularly, not sleeping 7 or 8 hours, all of these things, plus just being lazy and not moving. And those are the basic, and not taking your normal required supplements these days, like the essential, the youth permanent, the astaxanthin, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, it's for me, until the garden grows, it's going to be difficult for me to get fresh fruits and vegetables. Now, I can go and get the dandelions right now. That's okay. I can make dandelion salad because we've got them in the field. No problem with that. But for the most part, getting fresh fruits, I really don't want to touch fresh fruit. I don't want to go in the stores. So what do we do, Dr. Shealy?
Dried, powdered antioxidants.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Proud
Which ones?
Patriot Greens. Proud Patriot Greens. It's an excellent source. I think a scoop. I don't know if it's got 5 or 6, the equivalent of 5 or 6 servings of fruits and vegetables in it.
There you go. Proud Patriot Greens. So that's on the internet?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Class, on Friday, we're going to be joined with a brand new instructor, Kathy from Ohio. I talked to her over the weekend, and she's going to teach us about dehydrating and starting building from scratch, making things from scratch. I'm looking forward to it. Frugal living.
Oh, and that reminds me, mung bean sprouts. You can raise in 24 hours, you can have a whole serving of wonderful mung bean sprouts.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, Dr. Shealy. So mung beans, M-U-N-G, I believe is how it's spelled.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
So, but what do we do to make sure that we don't get salmonella? How do we treat them? Do we soak them in hydrogen peroxide? Do we put them in the oven at 140 degrees and no more? We have to be very careful when we raise sprouts, right?
Well, if you had the mung beans around for a month or two, I wouldn't worry. If you just got them in the mail, then I think I would probably just heat them to about 140 degrees for 10 minutes.
In the oven. Mm-hmm. Now, if you heat them higher than that, you'll destroy their ability to...
They won't sprout.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So up to 140, make sure you have an accurate thermometer, 10 minutes, class. What about soaking them in a dilute solution of hydrogen peroxide, Dr. Shealy?
Probably okay. Rinse them off and put regular water before you sprout them.
Okay, so what we're talking about, class, is sprouting. And you can buy books on sprouting on the internet. You can get them for less than $15. Dr. Shealy, do you have any books that talk about sprouting?
I don't think I have a single book that itself talks about sprouting, although it may be mentioned in other parts of some of my books. But I've been sprouting mung beans for 10 years.
Okay. Can you tell us the procedure, how you do it, Dr. Shealy?
It's like about 1/4 of a cup of mung beans. And you just rinse them off in water and soak them overnight in water and then drain it out and have a covered screen over them and let them sprout for 24 hours at room temperature.
Okay, now once they sprout, what do you do with them?
Well, then you eat them whole.
Okay, so you eat the whole sprout. Just rinse it. How many times a day do you rinse the beans as they sprout?
Oh, I only rinse. I just put them in a pan that's got like a sieve, and just run the water over them for a minute.
Okay. And then do you leave them in the sun, out of the sun?
Oh no, just in the room. Room temperature, doesn't have to be in the sun.
Okay. All right. So, class, if you want to have mung beans, they're green, and they will sprout. And if you're making your own bread, you can add them to your sandwiches. If you can find cheese, if you've had some meat in your freezer for a couple of months, maybe you can cook that up and slice it and make yourself a sandwich, or have mung beans as a green salad, right?
Yep, some oil and vinegar.
Sounds good. Do you use balsamic or what kind of vinegar, Dr. Shealy?
Yeah, I do have balsamic vinegar, yes.
Okay. And what is your favorite, most healthful vinegar that you use, Dr. Shealy?
Well, actually, most of the time I use apple cider vinegar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do too. We do too. Okay, and for disinfection purposes, do you use white vinegar?
Yeah, sometimes. If I just want to, if I'm not going to eat it or cook with it, I would use regular vinegar.
Okay. And do we have to buy organic mung beans, or can we buy mung beans that don't say whether they're organic or not?
Yeah, I don't pay attention to the word organic because 65% of the rain in this country has Roundup in it. No matter where it's grown, it's not truly organic. No such thing.
David, do you have any more comments that you'd like to share or questions with Dr. Shealy?
No, I was just trying to get this information.
That's Dr. Norm Shealy's with us. And if you'd like to go to his website, normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com, normshealy.com. And you can click on his on the tab for his vitamins, mineral supplements, and you can buy them at the same place that I do. Let's see, we've got Sharon in Montana. Welcome, you're on with Dr. Shealy.
Oh, good morning. I did miss your first hour, so I don't think you covered this. I have no idea. I was going to ask Dr. Shealy about the effectiveness of these cloth masks. My daughter, who is a nurse in ICU, says they aren't very effective. And I also was looking online. It looked like at best they might filter out 40% of the stuff. Maybe you would. And basically, it sounded like that it's supposed to try to keep you from giving it to somebody else if you were contagious. But it doesn't seem like it would be terribly effective given that viruses are so minute. What's your thoughts?
I agree. I don't wearing a mask, and I'm not going to. Unless I got ill. If I got ill, I would wear one to try to protect others, but I don't believe that they're that effective.
Yeah, from what I was reading, if you were going to make one, you'd want to make maybe out like furnace filter or vacuum cleaner bags might be tighter, even a flannel might catch more. But I feel really bad. I mean, these women they're just making them all over, and I'm thinking, well, I guess it might be a little better than nothing, but they don't even have any tests saying that they're effective at all, from what I can tell.
Well, my favorite statement is halitosis is better than no breath at all. So I suppose any filter is better maybe than none, but I don't think that it could be that good.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering if you had the other information that I couldn't find. I mean, I guess I'm pretty much staying home. So if I were having to go in, I might try something, better than nothing, but I'm just kind of burrowed in here. A little stir crazy, but I'm getting all kinds of projects done. But yeah, I just thinking, it seems like these women are spending all day sewing these masks, and it's very valiant and very nice, but I'm really doubting the effectiveness of them, honestly. So anyway, that was all I was going to say. I was also going to just mention that I think sprouted mung beans taste delicious. If nobody's ever done it, they might want to try it. Actually,
the best thing would be to have ultraviolet light near the ceiling of your room and wear sunglasses.
Well, okay. We tend to be fairly well stocked up because I can from summer, and we freeze our meat and stuff. So we don't really have a super compelling reason to have to go to all the stores. We just don't, So, but anyway, that's all I was going to ask.
Sharon, I've got one quick question to ask for you. Have you ever sprouted orange lentils?
No, I haven't. Quite a while back, I was sprouting a bunch of stuff.
Okay.
No, I don't remember.
Okay, I was just wondering.
I sprouted a lot of different things before, way back, but I actually really liked the mung beans. I thought they were really tasty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you can buy them. You can buy them on the internet right now for about 4 pounds, 4 pounds or so for a little over $20. 5 pounds for around $32.
Wow.
And Dr. Shealy, I was wondering, have you ever sprouted red lentils?
I've never sprouted anything but alfalfa and mung beans.
Okay. Now, do you think you could go to the to the feed store, like a farmer's feed store, and buy alfalfa seeds and sprout that? Is that the same? Or
I would think they've got some kind of junk on them.
Okay. All right. Very good. Anything else, Sharon?
No, I just I actually have stuff to sprout. I just haven't been doing it. You know, you can grow lettuce really fast, just in a pan, you know, outside, any kind of bucket container. Mm-hmm. You could grow lettuce, and you could grow kale, and you could grow some of the greens, and within probably 3 or 4 weeks, you'd start having stuff coming up. So, you know, if you want to supplement your diet, if you get a hold of any kind of those seeds, you know, you could grow a lot of stuff. But otherwise, I think sprouting is a really good option, like Dr. Shealy said. I actually, you know, before I told you, I dehydrate like my spinach and kale and that and powder it, and then you can just throw it into smoothies, and you're getting the same, pretty close to the same nutrition. They say it retains about 95% of the actual nutrition when you dehydrate, so that's pretty good.
Oh, and by the way, even celery powder is an excellent supplement. Dried celery powder.
Sense. Yeah. So anyway, there's a lot of options to try to stay healthy. But people could start growing now. I mean, like down where you're at, you've got ideal weather. We just had a dumping of snow 2 days ago, kind of a strange spring. But you still could grow stuff in your house in front of a south-facing window and grow greenery quite easily.
Well, let's take a couple of seconds and talk about that. So what we do is we have these buckets, these 20-gallon buckets that used to have farm protein in it for the cows. And we wash them out, we put some dirt in it, and we plant seeds. So they're out there. So you could take a 5-gallon bucket glass, make sure it's really clean, put some dirt in it, some soil, maybe a little bit of fertilizer and some lime, and add some seeds and grow lettuce right in your window. Is that what you're saying, Sharon?
Yeah, sure. Any kind of container. You could do a pie pan.
There you go. Yeah, or a Pyrex dish, you know, one of those baking dishes. Yes.
Yep.
Sharon, thanks so much for being with us.
All right,
Dr. Shealy, thank you for being with us.
Have a good one.
You too, Dr. Shealy. You too, Sharon.